Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the cracked leather boots and tightly laced corset of someone whose job you definitely wouldn't envy. The year is 1887. The city, London. Specifically the East End, Whitechapel, Spitalfields, places where cobblestone streets glisten with things you don't want to identify. And the fog isn't romantic, it's choking. You're not a socialite or a scullery maid, or even someone lucky enough to work in a factory. No, you're a Victorian brothel worker, and you've got maybe 24 hours left in you. Your cot creaks under your body as you stir. It's still dark, and the air is sharp with coal smoke. Your mouth tastes like last night's gin, and worse. The room smells of wet wool, old bread, unwashed skin, and something faintly metallic, probably blood, but it's best not to ask. You share this single room with 4 other women, all sprawled like discarded dolls across thin mattresses stuffed with horsehair. One is still snoring, another is coughing up phlegm that might be blood. You don't dare look too close. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull the coarse wool blanket tighter around your shoulders, but the cold seeps in anyway. There's no fire in the hearth. Madame says it wastes coal. Your breath clouds in the air, and your toes are numb. You slept in your shift again. It's the only garment that's still clean enough not to crawl. You consider getting up, but your head is pounding, and your stomach feels like it's full of nails. That cheap gin they sold last night might have been thinned with turpentine. Wouldn't be the first time. Outside, the city groans awake. You hear iron wheels grinding against stone horses whinnying, and the distant clang of a factory bell. A rat scurries across the floorboards. You sigh. Another day has begun. You sit up slowly, wincing. Your back aches. Your neck is stiff. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, careful not to knock over the chamber pot. It's full again. The privy down the alley froze 2 nights ago, and nobody's bothered with it since. You'll dump it later. Probably. Your hair is a mess of knots and grease. You finger comb it into something vaguely presentable and tie it with a scrap of ribbon. There's a small, cracked mirror on the wall, enough to confirm that your eyes are bloodshot. Your lip is split from what you can't remember, and there's a purplish bruise blooming along your jaw. Lovely. There's no time to wallow. Not in this life. You've got to be downstairs by 8, dressed and painted and ready to smile. Madame doesn't tolerate lateness, especially not from girls on the lower tier. That's you, by the way, the 2-shilling class. Upper girls get to sleep in. They entertain wealthier clients who can afford baths and full teeth. You meanwhile get the dock workers, the lamplighters, the men who smell like fish or boiling glue. Historians still argue whether brothel workers in Victorian London had any real agency, or whether survival just looked like submission. But one thing's certain, there's no safety net under you. No charity. No workers' rights. No rest. You stand up and feel something squish beneath your foot. Bread mouse, you don't check. You tiptoe over to the basin and splash your face with cold water fetched yesterday. It smells faintly of iron and ash. There's no soap, of course. Soap costs money. You hear one of the other girls mutter in her sleep. She's dreaming again, probably of France or of the sea. You almost smile, but then you remember she hasn't been paid in 3 weeks. No one has. Madame says your debts are still accumulating: the room, the clothes, the medicine. The gin. Especially the gin. You glance out the cracked window. The fog is thick today, brown and green like soup made from rot. The great stink may have passed, but the Thames still reeks at low tide. Coal smoke chokes the skyline. The sun, if it's up, is nowhere to be seen. Downstairs, the floor creaks. Heavy boots. Probably the cook or someone's early client. You swallow hard. It might be your turn already. You reach under your bed for the corset. It's still damp with yesterday's sweat, and you swear it's shrunk. You'll deal with that in a bit. First, you sit back down on the edge of the cot and just breathe for a few seconds. Because this might be the easiest moment of your day, and it's already hell. You finally force yourself upright and shuffle to the basin again, splashing your face with what's left of the water. It's icy and sharp, but it beats smelling like the rat-infested hallway downstairs. You pat yourself dry with a scrap of towel that still carries a hint of lavender from 3 washings ago. At least you like to pretend it does. Then it's time to get presentable. Presentable in this case means trying to look like you haven't been coughing up black phlegm and sleeping on straw-stuffed cushions. Your hair gets tugged into a loose bun with the same ribbon from yesterday. Your lips, bitten for color, cheeks. A slap or two does the trick, though it stings over the windburn. If you're lucky, one of the girls will share her pot of rouge beeswax and red ochre mostly, and smells faintly of beetroot and regret. You know how modern makeup tutorials go? Blend this, highlight that. But in your world, your mirror is a shard of glass nailed into a wooden frame, and your best tool is your pinky finger. Victorian cosmetics are a gamble. Some are handmade, some stolen. Others bought cheap off a street vendor who swears by a formula containing white lead, yes, actual poison. You smear some on your face anyway. It burns a little, but you look less dead. Barely. Now for the corset. You take a breath, or at least you try to. It's stained and laces are fraying, but it's your only one. You loop the stays, bracing yourself against the wall, and start pulling. Every tug digs the boning deeper into your ribs. It's not just about looking shapely, it's about control. Madame says a loose corset makes a loose girl. The irony is staggering. It takes 3 tries to get it tight enough. Your fingertips are numb and you're seeing spots. You lean on the wall and cough. Victorian women were praised for their fainting fits and bird-like appetites, convenient side effects of constant corset compression and malnutrition. Historians still debate whether these fashion trends were purely aesthetic or had darker disciplinary roots. You reach for your skirt, next wool heavy and patched where it wore thin between your thighs. There's a small blood stain on the back hem you didn't notice last night. You hope it's yours. Probably is. You tug the petticoat into place and step into your boots, one too tight, the other missing half a sole. Your left sock is damp. Again. You don't wear perfume. You can't afford it. But you rub some violet-scented pomade behind your ears, just enough to make you smell faintly floral beneath the stink of smoke, sweat, and sewage. Downstairs, you hear Madame's bell. It means breakfast inspection, and maybe if she's in a good mood, a boiled egg. Your stomach growls at the thought. Yesterday, you ate a heel of bread and half a pickled onion. Some days it's just broth, mostly water, with a few floating bits of marrow and turnip cooked so long it tastes of metal. The brothel buys food in bulk from the docks. Day-old loaves, bruised apples, and cuts of meat even the butcher wouldn't sell. There's no telling where it all comes from. Best not to ask. You head toward the door and pause. One of the other girls is still curled on her cot, eyes open but unfocused. You know that look hungover or maybe sick. Maybe both. You nudge her with your toe. Coming. She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. She'll be down by midday, face painted and smile forced. Like all of you. As you descend the crooked staircase, your knees creak with every step. The hallway is dim, the gas lamp sputtering, casting a yellow glow that makes everything look jaundiced. You pass a mirror and catch a glimpse of yourself, too pale, too thin, eyes ringed with shadow. You look older than your 20 years. Most of you do. The kitchen smells fondly of burnt toast and coal. You find a spot at the end of the long table. There's weak tea in chipped mugs and bread going stale on a tin plate. You take 2 slices and don't ask questions. Someone whispers that Madame found a mouse in the butter. You slather it on anyway. Hunger wins. There's a clatter as one of the upper girls enters Rosie, the favorite. She's already dressed in silk. Her cheeks are rouged just right. Her bodice tighter than yours. She gets the best clients. Sometimes you hate her. Sometimes you envy her. Mostly, you just want her to share her tea. Looking rough, she mutters as she sits beside you. You grunt in return. Breakfast is brief. You can't linger. Madame enters smelling of rosewater and camphor. Her hair in tight rolls like she's attending a funeral. She inspects each girl with an appraising eye, checking for signs of illness, for lice, for bad teeth. You stand up straighter as she approaches. Her gaze lands on the bruise on your jaw. Fall, did you? You nod. No point lying. She clicks her tongue and moves on. As long as you're upright, you're working. She rings her bell again. 10 minutes, she says. Clean the parlor. Hairbrushes on the sofa. Windows open, get the stink out. You exchange glances with the others. The windows have been painted shut since 1879. But you nod anyway. Orders are orders. Back upstairs, you steal a moment by the mirror again. The lead-based powder is already cracking at the corners of your mouth. You wipe it gently and sigh. You're ready. Or as ready as you'll ever be. Your day hasn't started yet, but your body already feels like it's ending. You're halfway down the second flight of stairs when the corset bites into your ribs again. You grip the banister, sucking in what little air your laced torso will allow. There's a reason fainting couches were invented, and it wasn't Victorian drama, it was physics. Still, you make it to the ground floor and into the parlor, which is trying very hard to look like a middle-class sitting room and failing miserably. There's an oil painting over the mantel, some stiff-browed nobleman glaring down like he's judging everyone, and threadbare velvet drapes that were last cleaned when Queen Victoria still smiled in public. You can't tell if the scent in the air is lavender mildew or someone's forgotten pipe tobacco. Likely all 3. You and the other girls set to work. Someone's brushing the worn chaise lounge, someone else is sweeping up last night's ash. You pick hairpins out of the rug. That's what Madame meant when she said cleaning. It's less domestic upkeep and more damage control. Then it's time for final presentation. You line up by the fireplace while Madame makes her morning inspection feel more like a cattle auction. She adjusts your bodice too low, too wrinkled, not enticing enough. You resist the urge to flinch. Her rings are cold, her fingers colder. Try to keep your shoulders back today, she says. Clients don't pay for slouching. Corsets were supposed to help with posture, of course, but no one talks about the nerve damage. Historians still argue whether Victorian women truly wanted this kind of discipline, or whether it was a cultural straitjacket masked as elegance. Your body is already protesting, but you can't afford to rest. You tug the stiff crinoline under your skirt, trying to keep it from twisting around your legs. It's wire and horsehair, and lies mostly meant to make you look desirable from a distance, even though it bruises your thighs and pinches your hips when you sit. Assuming you get to sit. One of the new girls, Annabelle, you think whispers that she passed out yesterday while walking across the room. No one even helped her up. Madame told her to practice breathing better. That's the advice. Breathe better. In a steel cage around your lungs. Sure. You return to your perch by the window. From here, you can see the street outside, narrow, grimy, loud. A costermonger's cart rolls by the wheels, splashing in some unidentifiable puddle. A man in a bowler hat tips his head toward the brothel sign and keeps walking. Not his taste, maybe. Or too early. Or maybe he's headed to one of the posher places, where the girls wear perfume and call you sir with sincerity. The girls talk around you, light chatter, quick laughs, all of it edged with something bitter. Rosie is showing off a pair of gloves a client left behind. They're leather stitched in Paris, worth more than your week's pay. Madame will sell them, of course. Nothing left behind stays with the girls. That's a house rule. You don't remember agreeing to any of the rules. They just appeared one day, pinned to the wall near the hearth, in Madame's curling handwriting. No shouting or profanity. No striking clients even if they deserve it. No stealing from Madame. No showing signs of illness. No fainting on the floor. No disrespect, ever. They're framed now, gilded even, as if printing them in gold makes them less cruel. You shift in your seat, wincing as the corset digs into your hips. You're already developing blisters where the steel whalebone meets skin. Victorian corsets weren't all cruelty. Some were custom-made, some genuinely helped posture, but not yours. Yours is a hand-me-down from a girl who left 3 months ago. No one asks where she went. No one wants to know. The bell above the door chimes. Everyone straightens instinctively. First client of the day. He's tall, thick-necked, wearing a wool coat that's seen better days. Dock worker, maybe. He smells of brine and damp rope. Not terrible, just present. He walks past the row of girls, eyeing each one like a butcher selecting meat. You meet his gaze just long enough to be polite, then lower your eyes. Too eager is bad. Too cold is worse. He points toward Clara. She nods, already rising. Her smile is so practiced it looks painted on. Madame claps once and they disappear upstairs. That leaves 11 of you waiting. You adjust your skirt again. Someone coughs. Time drags like wet laundry. Rosie pulls out a flask and offers a sip. You accept. Gin. Of course. The good stuff burns going down, but it dulls the throb in your ribs. You let it coat your throat like armor. You glance at the clock. Still only 9:45 a.m. Your corset has at least 10 more hours to go. You feel it before you even taste it. Your stomach turning into an empty drum gnawing at itself. The gin may have dulled the edges, but now it's making your head float uncomfortably above your body. Still, you clutch your mug of lukewarm tea like it's a lifeline. Across the room, one of the girls is chewing slowly on a biscuit that looks like it could chip a tooth. You envy her. You glance over at the basket on the sideboard, where scraps sometimes appear. It holds half a heel of bread today, already hard as plaster. You break off a piece anyway and chew slowly. No butter, no jam, just crumbs and the stale dust of someone else's breakfast. If you're lucky, you'll get some potato stew at supper. But that's hours from now. Victorian working-class breakfasts weren't glamorous. If you weren't part of the gentry sipping chocolate and nibbling eggs in silver cups, your morning meal was often nothing more than bread dripping or maybe weak tea. Even milk was a gamble. The milkmen often diluted it with water or worse, chalk. One newspaper even caught them selling milk laced with boric acid. Yum. And meat, forget it. The occasional bit of salted pork or offal was a rare gift, usually from a client who fancied himself generous. Mostly you survived on carbs and caffeine. And if that didn't keep you upright, gin would. Historians still argue whether brothel workers received better or worse nutrition than factory girls. Some say the steady access to male patrons meant regular meals, gifts, and tips. Others argue that addiction, stress, and debt stripped those privileges bare. Judging by the hollow look in Mary's face across the room, you'd lean toward the second theory. You sip your tea lukewarm and slightly gritty. One of the girls claims Madame reuses leaves from the night before. Probably true. There's a sudden commotion at the door. A second client, this one older with a coat that smells like mothballs and tobacco. His hair is neatly combed, mustache waxed into points. He's probably a clerk or a shop manager. Too clean to be dock labor, too broke to afford one of the fancy houses in Mayfair. He doesn't even scan the girls. He walks straight up to Madame and whispers in her ear. "Special arrangement," Madame says flatly before looking around the room. Her eyes land on you. "Upstairs, now." Your stomach drops. Special arrangement means something unusual, something uncomfortable, something that won't be discussed later. You glance at Rosie. She gives you a small shrug, the kind that says, "Glad it's not me." Your corset pinches as you stand. You smile, not too bright, not too dull, and lead the man upstairs. The staircase tilts slightly to one side, like the building's bowing under years of secrets. The room you enter is barely warmer than the hall. A single gas lamp flickers near the bed. The client says nothing. He unbuttons his coat slowly, eyes locked on yours. You do what you always do, pretend you're somewhere else. Later, you're back in the parlor, slightly dazed. The man didn't say thank you. He left coins on the table and didn't meet your eye again. You're not sure what hurts more, your back, your pride, or the cold knot sitting in your gut. You rub your arms to shake off the chill. One of the girls hands you her shawl. That's as close to tenderness as anyone gets around here. You thank her and wrap it tight. You're still shaking. You sit back down, eyes fixed on the window. The city is loud now. Street cries, church bells, the clip-clop of hooves on stone. A child runs by with a rag doll. Somewhere down the street, a horse slips and screams. You flinch. One of the girls is playing with a cat that wandered in from the alley. She's trying to teach it to sit, though it clearly wants no part in domesticity. A few of you laugh softly. The cat scratches her and bolts. The laughter turns to coughing. That's when the door opens again. Another client. He smells like fish. You sigh, stand, and tug your skirt straight. Time to smile again. The fog's rolled in thicker now, yellow-gray, oily, and dense enough that you can't see the stoop from the window. You don't need to. You can hear the boots, the wheels, the coughing. Victorian London's famous pea supers weren't just poetic metaphors. They were full-body experiences. Sulfur soot and soot's more aggressive cousin, industrial grime. You step outside briefly to toss the chamber pot. There's a designated gutter down the alleyway, but the rats usually get there first. You hold your breath and dump. The splash is immediate. Somewhere nearby, a man retches and a woman shouts something about filth running uphill. You head back inside where at least the filth is familiar. You're late for inspection. Again. Madame scowls, but she doesn't say anything this time. That probably means your last client tipped well. Maybe you'll get an extra lump of sugar with your tea tonight. Probably not. You head into the front parlor where another client has just arrived. He's younger than most. Blonde hair, half-decent boots, and that jittery energy you've come to associate with first-timers. His eyes dart from girl to girl before locking onto you. You smile softly. He relaxes. Mistake. Madame's already at his elbow, whispering prices, nodding toward you. You catch the phrase "new favorite" and try not to gag. He takes your hand too eagerly and leads you upstairs. This one wants to talk first, about his job printer's apprentice. His mother dead of consumption. His brother somewhere in South Africa, probably dead too. You nod politely, shifting in your seat to ease the corset's pressure on your stomach. You've learned to listen like it's a performance. Like you care. Like you haven't heard this same litany a dozen times before in different words with different breath. Eventually the talking stops. Afterward he cries a little. You give him a handkerchief you've used twice already. He doesn't notice. Back downstairs, Rosie's got a client of her own, a banker from the look of his coat. She's laughing too loudly at his jokes, and he's already pressing coins into Madame's hand before they head upstairs. You try not to stare at the stack. That kind of tip pays for shoes, or medicine, or a train ticket out, if it gets to you. Historians still argue whether women in the lower houses had any realistic chance of social mobility. Some say it happened a rich client, a marriage, a lucky inheritance. But the evidence sparse. Mostly wishful thinking in lace-edged diaries. More often, girls ended up in the workhouse or the infirmary, or worse, in prison, charged under vague public indecency laws that the constables applied like seasoning. You pass the time brushing lint from your skirt and trying to ease the pressure in your chest. The corset's tight today. Maybe you pulled it too hard earlier. Maybe your ribs are just tired. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. Another girl stumbles in from outside. She was on street shift when the parlor's slow madame sends you out to drum up business. It's worse out there. No walls, no lamps, no time to gauge a client's breath or fists or teeth. You just hope he doesn't drag you into a stable or behind a warehouse and leave you there. The girl who stumbles in tonight is limping. Her lip is split. Madame says nothing. You reach under your seat cushion and fish out the tin of ointment. It smells like tar and flowers and something vaguely medicinal. Probably goose fat and camphor. You dab it on the girl's mouth. She nods once. That's all you get. That's enough. Lunch is called, though, the word's generous. A thin stew with cabbage and a mystery meat that might once have mooed. It's warm at least, and it fills your stomach just enough to keep your legs moving. You eat standing because sitting means crushing your ribs into your hips. No one eats slowly. Meals are 10 minutes max. Then it's back to waiting. You manage to find a spot by the fire, a luxury you don't take lightly. Your fingers thaw. Your back relaxes. You almost forget the corset until you try to lean forward and the boning digs in again. Someone makes a joke about corset spine and you laugh harder than you should. A newcomer joins the parlor someone sent by the doctor. A woman, surprisingly. She's there to examine the girls. Routine check, supposedly. but you've been through enough to know this isn't for your sake. It's for the clients. Clean girls draw better money, Madame says. No one wants to catch the itch. You're lined up again, poked, prodded, looked over like livestock. She checks your gums, your breath, your thighs. You stare at the wall and try not to think. When it's over, you're deemed fine, whatever that means. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the hallway mirror, cheeks flushed from the fire powder flaking at the temples, lips slightly cracked. Your bodice has shifted again, and your corset's pressing hard enough to leave ridges under your skin. You straighten your shoulders. Another knock at the door. Another client. You smooth your skirt, square your aching spine, and walk forward. The parlor settles into a strange hush when Madame starts her pre-client shuffle. Her heels click-clacking across the warped floorboards as she sizes up the next arrival. You stay seated for a moment, watching the performance unfold. The man's middle-aged, clean-shaven, wearing a long wool coat and a pocket watch he likes to check a little too often. His eyes skim over the girls as though reading a menu. You know this type, polite voice, clean fingernails, kind to your face, cruel to your body. He stops in front of you. Name, he asks, though not like he cares. Lucy, you reply, though that's not your name. It's never your real name. He gives a tight smile. You'll do. Lovely. You follow him upstairs, footsteps silent behind his polished boots. The gas lamps flicker on the landing, casting your shadow ahead of you. You step into room 4. It's the cleanest one because no one ever stays long in it. Superstition. Someone died there last winter. A girl named Lottie. Cold night, bad lungs. No one found her until morning. You try not to think about that. You begin your routine. Smile. Unlace slowly. Pretend it's fine. The man is all business. Doesn't even remove his gloves. After he drops 3 shillings into your hand and leaves without a word. 3. That's generous. Almost suspiciously so. You hide the coins in your boot and sit for a minute. Not because you need to, but because your knees are trembling. Victorian brothels had a tiered system parlor. Girls upstairs, girls, street girls, and the shadowy crib workers who took men behind curtains or under stairs. You're technically in the middle rung. You have walls, a mattress. If you're lucky, a client with enough guilt to hand over a few extra pennies. But it's all conditional. Madame decides your worth at any given hour. Today she likes you. Tomorrow she might say you smell off and send you out onto the streets with no bonnet and no supper. You freshen up at the wash basin, rinsing between your legs with a cloth that's more threadbare than clean. There's vinegar in the water, sour and stinging. Rosie swears it keeps away disease. You're not so sure. Back downstairs, you pass the sofa where Madame sits like a tax collector. She nods at you. That's it. You're clear for the next hour. You collapse into a corner chair and exhale slowly. Your ribs expand against the corset with a creak. The pain is dull now, constant. Background noise. Across the room, 2 girls are whispering about a client who came in last week with a rash. Eliza says it was syphilis. Mary swears it was just eczema. You try not to think about either, because you've had the itching, the burning, the fear that something invisible is spreading under your skin. One of the girls offers a cure she bought from a back alley apothecary, sheep gut, soaked in vinegar and brandy. You nod like you believe it, like it's not just folk remedy laced with wishful thinking. Victorian medicine is a gamble. Most of the time, you're better off trusting a drunk midwife than a licensed doctor. One girl once tried mercury powder. She couldn't speak properly for days. And forget condoms, they're reused goat bladders at best, and that's when the client agrees to one, which he usually doesn't. Historians still argue whether brothels had regular access to real medical care. The wealthier ones, maybe. Yours, you're lucky if the doctor shows up once a month, and he doesn't always remember names. Speaking of names, Madame enters the room and calls yours. Not your real one, of course. The house name. Lucy, front room, another client. Already, you groan softly, stand smooth your skirt and paste on a new smile. This one's drunk. He reeks of gin and onions. His boots are wet and he drips on the floor as you lead him up. He wants to kiss. You hate kissing. It feels too personal, too close. But you let him. He tastes like brine and stale beef. Later, he falls asleep, face down on the bed. You take the opportunity to lift a few coins from his pocket, quietly, carefully. You'll slip half to Madame. Maybe she'll pretend not to notice. You leave the room, exhale again, and make it halfway down the stairs before your ankle buckles in your boot. The heel's coming loose. You curse softly. Back in the parlor, one of the younger girls is brushing her hair, trying to get the lice out with a comb she boiled in vinegar. You give her a sympathetic glance. It's all anyone can offer. You check the clock, still not noon. You barely have time to catch your breath before the bell above the front door rings again. Another client. They're coming in steady now. Lunchtime apparently is also peak time for bad decisions and cold coins. Madame surveys the man like a butcher eyeing livestock. He's thick around the middle with yellowed fingers from too much pipe smoking. A red scarf's knotted at his neck, more fashion than warmth, and his eyes are already glassy. That's the worst kind. Drunk, but not sloppy, entitled. Loud. Probably mean. He grins at Rosie first. She turns her face. Not her turn. Then his eyes land on you. You know the drill. Come on, sweetheart, he says. Let's not waste the daylight. You follow him upstairs, already bracing. The room smells of damp wool and tobacco. He wants to talk. Then he wants to insult you. Then he wants you to laugh at his insults. You do, lightly, because it's safer than silence. When he finishes, he tosses a single shilling on the floor. Not in your hand. Not on the table. On the floor. Don't spend it all on soap, he says and stumbles out. You sit in the corner for a moment, collecting yourself. Your legs shake again. Your breath catches in your throat. You wait until you're sure you won't cry, because that's the one thing Madame really won't tolerate. Tears. They're bad for business. You return downstairs. No one asks how it went. They can see it on your face. Eliza hands you the tin of balm again. You dab some behind your ears, pretending it's perfume. The rosemary and turpentine mixture stings, but it's familiar. Comfort in its own bizarre way. You slump into the corner by the fireplace and stretch your legs. Bad idea. The corset stabs into your ribs again, and your thighs are cramping. You wish you could undo the laces for 10 minutes. Just 10. But that would take help. And there's no time. Another client could walk in any moment. The rules keep echoing in your head. No tears. No disrespect. No resistance. You try not to think about what happens if you break one. Madame has ways cold water in the face, docked wages, public shaming in front of clients. Once she made a girl spend a full day scrubbing floors in just her shift as punishment. Another time she tossed someone's only boots into the hearth. She says the house can't afford weakness. Historians still debate whether brothel workers in the lower rungs had solidarity with each other or were more likely to turn on one another out of desperation. You've seen both. Eliza will hold your hand when you're shaking. Rosie will steal your bread when you're not looking. But you understand. Hunger does strange things to people. So does fear. You try to eat something, just a chunk of cheese someone left out, but it's gone sour. Your stomach growls anyway. The bread's stale, the tea's cold, and there's a strange reddish powder on the sugar. Someone's been dosing again. Probably Mary. She swears laudanum helps her stay soft, but the haze in her eyes lately says she's circling the drain. Another client comes in, this one young, maybe your age. He looks nervous, holding his hat in both hands. A clerk, maybe, or an apprentice. First time, probably. You try to catch his eye, not because you want him to choose you, but because if he does, he might be gentle. He chooses Rosie instead. You exhale. Relief, for now. One of the older girls, Agnes, comes down from upstairs, looking pale. She whispers something to Madame, who snaps her fingers. "No time to be sick," she mutters. "Tell her to rinse with gin." Rinse with gin. That's the medical care. You slip outside for air. The fog wraps around you like a damp woolen shroud. You can barely see 2 feet ahead. The smell is worse now, coal smoke, rotting cabbage, and a hint of horse dung. London's heartbeat in its own way. A newspaper boy shouts headlines from the next street. Ripper still at large. Woman's body found in Whitechapel Alley. You flinch. The Ripper's real. Everyone talks about him now, some shadowy figure who guts women like pigs and disappears into the fog. Some girls joke that he's one of their clients. Some say he's a doctor. Some say he's not real at all, just a cover for regular violence. But the fear is real. You've seen girls go missing. You've heard the blood-curdling rumors. You've walked past alleys that never get sunlight. You step back inside and close the door behind you, bolting it out of habit. You lean against it and breathe slow and deep until the world stops spinning. You've survived the morning, just barely. You've barely sat back down when the bell chimes again. This time it's a woman, not a client. A patrol woman in a blue cape and gloves with a clipboard under her arm and judgment in her eyes. Society for the Suppression of Vice, her lapel pin reads. You've seen her before, her or someone like her snooping around, peeking through shutters, questioning grocers about known women. She's not here to help. She's here to observe, to document, maybe even to write a report to the magistrate. Madame puts on her silk smile and greets her like an old friend. How nice to see you, Miss Wilkin. Would you care for a tea? Miss Wilkin declines. She always does. She's here to inspect, not to sip. You and the other girls suddenly become mannequins, smiling upright, unnatural. You tuck your hem down further than usual and pretend you weren't just licking crumbs off your fingertips. Miss Wilkin's voice is clipped. And is everyone here over the age of majority? Yes, of course, Madame lies smoothly. You wonder if she even remembers how old some of the girls are. Wilkin doesn't press it. She's not paid to dig deep just to be seen doing her duty. Any recent complaints of disorder? Madame tilts her head with that performative confusion. Only the usual noises. You know how spirited clients can be. Wilkin's lips purse like she's sucking on a lemon. There have been whispers about laudanum use and venereal disease. At that, your stomach twists. Disease. The thing you all pretend isn't real until the signs are undeniable sores that don't heal, hair that falls out in patches, eyes that cloud over with madness. Syphilis. You've seen it eat someone from the inside out. Historians still argue whether early brothels actively concealed illnesses or if they simply had no real means of treating them. What you know is that disease doesn't knock, it seeps in silently. Like the fog, like shame. Madame Toots. We are a clean house, Miss Wilkin. We fumigate weekly. You glance at the fireplace. They toss lavender in the coals sometimes and call it fumigation. Doesn't do much more than make the rats sleepy. Miss Wilkins scribbles a few notes, scans the room once more, and turns to leave. At the door, she pauses. If any of you wish to leave, there are rescue societies. You need only ask. You don't move. No one does, because you have asked. And they told you you needed proof you'd been reformed. A reference. A job offer. A moral sponsor. A second birth certificate signed by an angel, maybe. The hoops are impossible. They don't want to rescue you. They want to be seen wanting to rescue you. When the door shuts behind her, everyone exhales in unison. She'll be back, Madam mutters. Probably next Tuesday. Wear stockings next time, Eliza. You shuffle to the back room to freshen up. That means wiping down with vinegar and water. No bath. Not until the weekend, if you're lucky. You dab at the bruises on your thighs. You check your eyes in the mirror. Still clear. No signs of fever. You give thanks for that. Then comes the whistle. That means food. Dinner, if you can call it that. A communal pot of something beige and wet. You don't ask what's in it. Meat, maybe. Probably turnips. Definitely gristle. Eliza adds mustard to hers like it's a delicacy. You chew slowly, not because you enjoy it, but because you want it to last. This is your one quiet moment of the day, and it's not even that quiet someone's crying upstairs muffled under a pillow. Madame pretends not to hear. You sit with Mary, who's drifting again. Her pupils are tiny pinpricks. It's fine, she slurs. It helps me float. You want to shake her. Instead, you hold her hand. She dozes off halfway through her stew. You think about the ones who've left. Some escaped, supposedly. Got married. Found work in a laundry. Moved to Brighton. You've heard all the stories. But the more realistic ones are the girls who were sent away when they got too sick. Or too pregnant. Or both. No one hears from them again. You ask Rosie quietly, "You ever think about getting out?" She snorts. "And do what cell matches like a Dickens ghost." You both laugh, sort of. The fire burns low. You hear the distant clatter of hooves on cobblestone. A cart goes by playing a hurdy-gurdy tune. Children are still shouting in the alley. Someone screams, not in pleasure. You don't even flinch anymore. It's just London. You're not even halfway through the night when he arrives, the one you've been dreading. Not a brute, not a gentleman. Just one of those in-between men, slippery as an eel in a barrel of oil. His name might be Henry, or George, or something forgettable with a thick wallet and thin morals. He smells like camphor and clove water, and he smiles too often. You remember what Rosie said last week. The worst ones are the polite ones. They ask first, then do what they want anyway. He tips his hat, bows too low, compliments your perfume even though you're not wearing any. It's probably the soap from the communal dish. You nod, take his hand, lead him up the stairs like it's a stage performance. And really it is. Your room is small and smells faintly of wet plaster and wax. He asks if you'll undress slowly. You do. Because it's part of the show and this audience is paying. He makes comments about your hips, your knees, the mole on your shoulder, like he's critiquing wallpaper. You laugh at his jokes because not laughing might provoke something worse. And when he's done, you don't cry. You blink. You dress. You rinse your mouth. You say thank you. That's the routine. Like tea service. Like church. Historians still argue whether most Victorian sex workers disassociated as a coping mechanism or simply developed a practiced emotional neutrality. You're not sure which category you fall into, but you know how to disappear inside your own skin. You've gotten good at it. You sit on the edge of the bed counting coins while he laces up his boots. He leaves a tip. You think that's meant to make it okay. Downstairs, Mary is throwing up. Probably from the stew. Possibly from laudanum. Possibly from her own hollowed-out spirit. You leave her a damp rag and a mint pastille you've saved. Then you check the ledger. There are still 3 clients booked before sunrise. One's a copper. They usually are. One's a pair man and wife. She just watches. You've done that act before, though it leaves you colder than most. And one is T, no full name, just an initial. Those are always the most dangerous. You pour yourself a glass of gin and knock it back. It burns, but at least it's real. That's something. Then you fix your hair in the mirror. Pull your shift straighter. Reapply the rouge. Here comes the copper. He slaps your rear like he owns it. Tells you his wife doesn't do this sort of thing. Tells you you're lucky to have steady employment. You smile through your teeth and imagine him falling down an open sewer. He's fast, at least. That's the blessing. When he's gone, you wash again with vinegar water that stings the cuts on your thighs. You pat dry with a fraying towel. You wonder how many more nights your body will allow. Downstairs, someone's broken a glass. Madame is shrieking. Someone's stealing gin again, maybe Mary. You hear a scuffle, a crash, and then that dangerous silence where no one breathes. Rosie whispers, "Don't go down there," so you don't. You stay in your room and fold your hands in your lap like a Victorian portrait. Try to think about something soft, something green. Maybe the meadows outside London, if you ever saw them. Maybe just a dream of them lifted from a penny novel. Your stomach growls again. You ignore it. You light a stub of a candle, careful not to breathe too close. Wax has scorched your fingers before. And then there's the knock. Not the soft one, not the drunk one, but the hollow 3-tap knock that means tea has arrived. You don't open the door right away. You think about bolting the lock, hiding under the bed, pretending to be out. But there's nowhere to run. Nowhere that doesn't lead back here eventually. You take a breath count to 3 and open the door. He's tall, thin, dressed in charcoal gray, gloves on, no hat. He steps inside without permission, doesn't speak, doesn't smile. You remind yourself to keep your voice level. "Evening, sir. Shall I take your coat?" He doesn't have one. He hands you a small envelope. Inside is 10 shillings, twice the normal fee. You know what that means. He doesn't want conversation or kindness. He wants power. And you're tired, but you bow slightly. And you begin the act again. Just like always, the door clicks shut behind him, and suddenly the room feels colder. Maybe it's the way he moves, precise, rehearsed, like a man who's done this far too many times and forgotten why he ever started. He places his gloves carefully on the dresser, like he's in a hotel and you're a towel folded at the foot of the bed. You try not to look nervous, but something about him makes your palms damp. Not fear exactly, more like precaution. Your body coils instinctually alert. T, if that's even his real initial, sits in the lone chair. Doesn't speak. Just gestures a flick of his finger and you understand. You start undressing slowly, but he shakes his head. "No, sit." So you sit. He studies you as if you're a butterfly pinned beneath glass. Not lasciviously, almost clinically. And that's worse somehow. There's always one every few weeks who doesn't want your body, at least not in the usual sense. They want to observe, to control, to see if they can make you squirm without ever raising a hand. Historians still argue whether psychological domination was more common than physical violence in high-end Victorian brothels, or if that's simply what survives better in letters and court records. Either way, this kind of encounter leaves marks you can't see in a mirror. He asks you questions, strange ones. What did your father do? Do you think pain refines people? Have you ever watched someone die? Each question demands not just an answer, but a performance of vulnerability. You learn quickly that honesty unsettles him while whimsy earns a raised eyebrow. So you tell half-truths, tuck emotion into parentheses. It's like threading a needle with no light. After an hour, he leaves. He doesn't touch you, doesn't even say goodbye, just puts his gloves back on, smooths his lapel, and exits. You sit motionless on the bed, the room filled with the phantom weight of unsaid things. And that's the thing about this job, sometimes the silence does more damage than the noise. You try to sleep, but the mattress is damp from sweat and worry. The pillow smells like last week's perfume and mildew. You flip it over, count the cracks in the ceiling, and finally drift into a fevered half-dream, where you're back in your childhood kitchen, buttering bread that turns into coins the moment your knife touches it. You wake up coughing. Coal smoke drifts in from the street. Your throat is dry. You pad downstairs barefoot, passing Rosie asleep on the landing like a discarded doll. In the kitchen, the stew pot's still on the stove, though what's in it is more glue than food. You sip some water, trying not to gag on the rusted aftertaste of the pipe. And that's when Madame calls you. Not by name, she never uses names. Just you, upstairs. You blink. But no buts. There's a visitor. He's brought wine. Your legs move before your brain catches up. You climb one aching step at a time to the private parlor. Only well-paying guests use that room. Plush cushions, a fireplace, even lace curtains if you ignore the stains. Inside is a man in a navy frock coat, hair oiled and curled, eyes bright as pins. He's smiling. You hate that smile. He pours you a glass without asking and says, "To the night." You sip. It's sweet, probably claret laced with something. Laudanum, maybe. Or just too much sugar. You can't tell anymore. He talks a lot. About Parliament. About horses. About how women today don't know their place. You nod in all the right spots, chuckle when he expects it. It's like dancing with someone who never touches you, but steps on your toes anyway. Midway through, he reaches for your wrist, not roughly, delicately, as if he's about to read your palm. But his fingers are cold, and his grip tightens just enough to make your stomach flutter with dread. He leans close. "You're not like the others," he whispers. You smile, because that's what you do. He takes you then fast, messy, knocking over the wine. The carpet will stain. Madame will charge you for it. After he buttons up, tosses 2 coins on the table and hums as he leaves. You wipe your thighs with a rag from the corner, then sit cross-legged on the floor. Too tired to move. Too tired to feel. A rat skitters across the baseboard. You barely blink. You wonder if you've ever had a dream where you weren't working, or performing, or saying yes when you meant no. The fire crackles low. Outside, the lamplighter passes, and for a moment, your shadow stretches long and tall on the wall behind you, like someone else entirely. Someone who might survive this city. But then the flame gutters out, and you are you again. You're not sure what wakes you. A door closing, maybe, or just your own breath catching in your throat. Morning light bleeds through the stained lace curtains, thin and gray like dishwater. Your limbs feel filled with sand. Sleep doesn't rest you anymore. It just stalls the next wave. Downstairs, the house is already stirring. The cook clatters pans, and somewhere Rosie is retching into the garden basin again. You imagine the neighbors shaking their heads over their morning tea. What a shame such pretty girls going to waste. You drag yourself from the carpet joints, cracking like old floorboards. There's a bruise on your collarbone you don't remember getting. Another to add to the unseen mosaic under your dress. Today you have laundry duty. Not all brothel work is seduction and satin sheets. Much of it is exactly what you'd expect from a household of overworked women and cheap cloth stains, tears rinsing blood from corset laces. And you're not allowed to slack just because you had a rough night. Everyone has rough nights. That's the baseline here. So you strip the beds, yours and others. Sheets stiff with sweat, perfume, and the occasional trace of worse. You try not to breathe through your nose. Victorian hygiene, after all, is an evolving concept, and it hasn't yet evolved very far. Historians still argue whether the average Victorian brothel was cleaner or filthier than a factory boarding house, but that's splitting hairs. Neither smells like roses. The idea of miasma, that disease spreads through bad air, is popular, but it doesn't stop the streets outside from being thick with dung soot and spoiled cabbage. You pass Bess in the hallway, arms full of towels, her eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. She mutters a soft "mornin'," and you nod. There's a tenderness between the girls that no one speaks aloud. A kind of battlefield camaraderie. You're not friends, not really, but you'd watch each other's backs in a pinch, especially when things go wrong. And they do go wrong. Like when Eliza nearly bled out 2 weeks ago after a botched alley procedure. Madame said nothing, just told the rest of you to bleach the mattress and keep your mouth shut. Or when Polly got a regular who started following her home on her off days. Took 3 of the older girls to threaten him off, and Madame wasn't one of them. You wonder sometimes why any of you stay. But you know the answer. It's the same reason you came here in the first place. Because for women in your position, unmarried, unconnected, unpropertied, there are no respectable jobs that pay enough to feed you and keep your little brother in boots. Because virtue doesn't pay rent. And because even the worst nights here are often better than the slow starvation of a laundress's wage. In the garden, you wring out pillowcases over a rusty basin. Your knuckles are cracked, your fingertips raw. The soap stings like judgment. It's cold, and you can see your breath puff out in little clouds. A robin hops along the fence. For a second, you forget everything. Just watch it bob and peck and flit away again. You almost laugh. The absurdity of it. A brothel girl finding peace in a bird. But that's what you do, take the scraps of beauty where you can find them. Back inside, Madame is shouting again. Not at you this time. At Lottie, who dropped a tray of dishes. Porcelain shards everywhere. Lottie's crying quietly as she sweeps. Madame turns to you. You parlor. Gentlemen waiting. You're still damp from the garden. Your dress smells of soap and boiled linen. But there's no time to change. You paste on a smile that feels like it belongs to someone else and head upstairs. The gentleman is drunk already. Midday sun slants in through the curtains, making the dust in the room look almost magical, like powdered gold suspended in time. It's a cruel illusion. He slurs his way through compliments, calls you darling and angel, then grabs your wrist hard enough to make you wince. You've barely said hello. You do what you must. You make it fast. Afterward, you wash up in the tin basin. No hot water today. You scrub between your thighs with a rag you don't trust and try not to cry. In the mirror, your face looks older. Not aged, just emptied. You dab perfume behind your ears. Put your corset back on. Plait your hair. There's no glamour here. No lace fantasy like in the penny novels. No velvet chaise lounges and powdered wigs. Just work, like any other job. Except your body is the tool, the currency, and the battlefield. And sometimes the customers are just the start of your problems. Because when Madame is short on cash, she cuts from your pocket first. Because if you get sick, there's no doctor. Because when the constables come to raid, yes, even the licensed brothels, they don't arrest Madame. They arrest you. And yet you survive. Hour by hour, task by task. Laundry, face powder, laughter on command. Another sheet changed. Another name to forget. Sometimes you catch yourself humming. A tune your mother sang, maybe. Something about summer or cows in a field. You don't remember the words, but the rhythm keeps you going, like a song that pretends everything is still okay. Your bones ache before the clock even strikes 4. Not that you own a clock, you tell time by the slant of the shadows and the frequency of knocks on your door. When the knocking slows, you know evening is on its way, and with it comes the cruelest shift of all the dinner crowd. Madame calls it the theater crowd, as if you're some sort of actress taking the stage. But there's no curtain call, no polite applause. Just the clink of coins and the weight of eyes that see you less as a person and more as something to consume. Like a dessert they're entitled to just for showing up. Tonight, you're on the salon roster. That means you'll be poured into your best dress, the dark red velvet one with the fading trim, and paraded around the parlor like a wine bottle with legs. The men will choose or not choose, and Madame will tally it all in her little book. You don't get to see the numbers. Only your cut handed over with the grow of a miser tipping a street musician. You step into the corridor and run your fingers along the wallpaper, tracing the little faded roses. It's moments like these where your mind splits. Part of you walks toward the parlor with practiced poise. The other part lingers, floats outside yourself, wondering, is this what surviving looks like? Rosie walks beside you, cheeks powdered pale, her lips a careful red smear. You get the drunk from Tuesday again. I'll trip him on the stairs, she murmurs. It's a joke mostly. You both laugh because laughter is one of the few things they can't charge you for. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothels provided a form of limited empowerment for women, or merely another system of exploitation disguised as economic independence. And the answer, you suspect, is yes, to both. You have your own money, you have your own room, but you also have no real choices. Freedom by degrees is still a cage. Downstairs, the lamps are already lit. Gaslight flickers over the red wallpaper, casting the room in a smoky, golden haze. It's meant to be flattering, this light, but it also hides things. Hides bruises, hides tired eyes, hides the truth. The men arrive in clusters, suits slightly rumpled from work or whiskey. They speak in low, confident tones, puffing cigars like they own the place. And technically they do. Their money keeps the house running. Their whispers decide who's in favor and who's out. You stand with the others, making small talk when approached. Always flirt, never offend. Never appear too eager. Desperation is unattractive. But never too aloof, either men don't pay to be ignored. It's a tightrope walk across a pit full of unspoken rules. One man tall and with a mustache that looks like it was sculpted with wax and arrogance eyes you from across the room. He lifts his glass slightly, then gestures toward the staircase with a raised eyebrow. No words, just expectation. You nod silently. Lead the way. Upstairs, you recognize the rhythm already. He wants silence. He doesn't want your story. He wants performance. You give him that. You give him everything except yourself. After he leaves, you sit on the edge of the bed, robe wrapped tight, and stare at the pattern on the carpet until the nausea passes. The window's cracked, letting in the night air, and with it the distant clang of horseshoes and carriage wheels. London doesn't sleep. You hear a girl's laugh from the alley below. Not one of yours, someone younger probably trying to hustle without a madame. You wonder how long she'll last, and yet you don't pity her. She might have more freedom than you do. She might also disappear before dawn. This world offers both possibilities in equal measure. You rinse your face in cold water, reapply powder, and change the perfume dabbed on your neck. Jasmine tonight. It's all about illusion. A different scent, a different mask, a new self for each room. You pause by the hall mirror. There you are, lovely, composed, lifeless. You smile at yourself, a smile that doesn't reach your eyes, and return to the parlor. The night thickens. You watch the clock on the mantel tick toward midnight. 3 more clients. One of them is gentle, bless him. The other 2 forget your name before they've even buttoned their waistcoats. There's something mechanical about it now. You fold your body like laundry, smooth your voice like linen wear, kindness like a corset tight but necessary. Every now and then you glimpse the other girls. Rosie trying not to cry after a customer slaps her backside too hard. Lottie sipping brandy in the corner and pretending she isn't shaking. Bess singing softly in French, as if she remembers another life. It's easy to forget how young you all are. Easy to forget you once had dreams beyond surviving the next 12 hours. One of the housemaids passes you a note. It's from Madame. Be extra sweet to the man in room 6. He's connected. You know what that means? It means smile wider, laugh easier, pretend he doesn't reek of cigars and entitlement. You tuck the note into your garter, head back up the stairs. You have no idea who you'll be by morning, but you'll be someone who made it. For now, that's enough. By now, your body knows the motions better than your mind. You ascend the stairs toward room 6, heels silent on the carpet that muffles all but the creaks of your weary joints. You check your reflection in the hallway mirror again, not out of vanity, but necessity. Lipsticks still holding. Eyes look alert. Chin up, shoulders back. The show must go on. Room 6 is already open, a crack, an invitation, and a warning. He's inside, waiting. You knock anyway, soft as etiquette, and push the door open. He's seated in the armchair by the fire legs, crossed, a tumbler of brandy in his hand. His suit is better tailored than the rest. His fingers are manicured. This is a man used to having things just so, including the women who cross his path. And tonight, that's you. He doesn't smile, just nods, then gestures to the bed without speaking. You slip inside, shut the door behind you, and take slow steps forward. There's no conversation, not even the pretense of curiosity. He's not interested in your name, your past, or the dull ache in your ribs from the too tight corset. You're not a person to him. You're a service, and still you deliver. Because not delivering isn't an option, not when Madame's watching. Not when men like him can decide if your name stays on the parlor roster or vanishes into a corner room no one visits. Later, much later, you find yourself back in the small washroom that serves as your private sanctuary. You splash cold water on your face and brace your hands against the porcelain basin. Your hands are trembling. You whisper to yourself, "You're still here. You're still here." Like it's a mantra. Like it might turn into truth. Historians still argue whether women like you were victims, survivors, or some strange hybrid of both neither free nor fully caged. A walking contradiction in petticoats. Some records show women saving enough to start their own businesses, even owning property. Others show the names of girls who died in debt, with no one claiming their bodies. You know which side you're leaning toward. You descend to the kitchen. It's quieter here. Empty now, but for Mary the cook and a warm loaf cooling on the sideboard. Mary's kind in that distracted way that women in hard jobs tend to be. She slides you a piece of bread and pats your hand. "Sugar's locked up," she says apologetically. "But warm is warm, eh?" You eat in silence. The bread is plain, but it's real. Something solid in a night of illusions. The warmth soaks into you. Eventually you return upstairs. You peel off your corset like it's a second skin you're tired of inhabiting. Your chemise sticks to your back with sweat and weariness. You collapse into the mattress, not gracefully, not in the way a gentleman might expect. Just fall, a sack of bones too tired to dream. But sleep doesn't come easy in this house. The walls are thin. You hear footsteps, laughter, the rustle of skirts, a bed creaking down the hall. Someone humming. A man groaning. Another woman crying. And somewhere in the chaos, a memory flickers. Your first night. Your real first night before you learned the tricks, before you understood the pricing tiers or how to smile while dissociating. You'd thought you were clever. You'd even worn your mother's old brooch thinking it might help you stand out. It did. One of the older girls took it before the night was over. You never saw it again. You don't miss the brooch. You miss the girl who wore it. The one who still had hope. The mattress dips. You startle, but it's just Bess slipping in beside you. She does that sometimes. No explanation. Just the comfort of another body beside yours. A reminder you're not alone even when it feels that way. She doesn't say anything. She just pulls the blanket up over both of you. The two of you lie there curled like stray cats, listening to the house exhale. You wonder how long this will last. Not the work, though, that's its own ticking clock, but the endurance. The will to stay soft, to laugh, to care about anything beyond the next 5 shillings. There are rumors, of course. There always are. One of the girls has a wealthy patron. Another's run off with a client. Someone's cousin's friend married a tailor and now lives by the sea. But you don't believe in fairy tales anymore. Not here. Not when so many of the stories end with a coughing fit and an unmarked grave. Fringe records from the time suggest brothel workers suffered far more from respiratory disease than syphilis, a morbid twist few acknowledge. London's air isn't kind. Neither are damp sheets or sleepless nights. Outside, the city yawns and stretches. Dawn's not far off. You feel it before you see it, the shift in the air, the way birds start testing their throats in the trees outside. You close your eyes and let your breathing match Bess's. One inhale, one exhale. 1 more minute survived. Somewhere downstairs, Madame's beginning her ledger. She'll count the money. She'll scowl. She'll mark someone low performance and another favorable. You might be either. You might be both. But for now, you're horizontal. You're warm. You're alive. And somehow that's victory enough. You wake before your body wants to, because someone's knocking again. Not the door this time, but your mind. It reminds you the morning isn't a reprieve. It's just the next shift. Bess is already gone. Her side of the bed's cold. Maybe she never truly slept. You sit up, brush the curls from your face, and stretch slowly vertebra by vertebra, like an old cat that's learned not to rush anything. It doesn't have to. Downstairs, the house is quieter than expected for morning. The men are gone, of course, fled at first light to their wives, their ledgers, their reputations. But something's off. Madame is standing at the foot of the stairs, stiff as starched linen. In her hand, the ledger. She gives you a look flat, unreadable. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Kitchen, now. Not what you wanted to hear with bare feet and aching joints, but you obey. You always obey. In the kitchen, 3 other girls are already lined up, Bess, Annabelle, and Grace, all wide-eyed. A pot of tea untouched on the counter. Then Madame says that Eleanor's dead, just like that. No soft preamble, no kindness. You don't realize you've sat down until the chair creaks beneath you. Eleanor. Not your closest friend, but still part of the rhythm of the place. The girl with the black ribbon who always smelled like rose soap, who hummed Mozart when nervous. Pox Bess whispers. Madame shakes her head. No. Opium. Stupid girl thought it might help her sleep. Opium. The laudanum some of the girls used to dull the aches and stifle the nerves. That tiny glass vial of escape. You've thought about it. Who hasn't? Annabelle asks Will the police come. They already have, Madame says. Decided it was accidental. We burn the sheets and move on. And that's that. One life folded away like linens. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothels acted as protectors or predators. Some records suggest madams provided food shelter, even informal health care. Others describe them as pimps in corsets, exploiting desperation. The truth likely lives in that uncomfortable in-between, same as everything else in your life now. You spend the morning washing Eleanor's things, quietly. No one says her name again. Her belongings are sorted, some repurposed, some burned. The ribbon you leave hanging on the bedpost like a ghost. After lunch bread again, and weak tea, you're summoned to the parlor. A new girl has arrived. Fresh from the country, cheeks still full, eyes still too open. Madame says show her the ropes. You almost laugh. Not out of cruelty, but exhaustion. Show her the ropes. Which ropes? The ones she'll hang her innocence on, the ones that tie a corset too tight. The ones that metaphorically bind her here until she's numb enough not to care. Still, you take her upstairs. She chatters nervously. Thanks you for being so kind. Says she's only here until her brother sends word. Says she used to work in a mill. Of course she did. So many of you come from the mills or laundries or houses where work means more than wages. It means bruises and silence and being invisible. You help her unpack. She's brought a comb, a small Bible, and a bundle of letters tied in twine. You don't ask about them. She'll learn soon enough. That evening, the gentlemen are different. One wears cologne that makes your eyes water. Another tries to tip you with a foreign coin. A third calls you darling, like it's a joke only he's in on. You dance, you serve drinks, you smile when you don't want to. But tonight you're tired in a new way. Not body tired, soul tired. So when the coin man leans too close, you step away. When the darling gentleman asks for something off books, you say no before he can finish. Madame notices. Of course she does. After the last guest leaves, she corners you in the hallway. Is there a problem? You shrug, too worn for tact. Just not in the mood. Her mouth twitches. Mood isn't part of the arrangement. You meet her eyes. Neither was death. A pause. For once, Madame doesn't have a ready reply. She turns, walks away. That night you lie awake. Bess doesn't come. The bed feels colder. You think about Eleanor. You think about the new girl's Bible. You think about your mother's hands and the way she used to braid your hair before church. And you wonder if someone had warned you, really warned you, would it have changed anything? Or were you always bound to this place, this life, this script? A fringe detail you once overheard in some brothels girls practiced a nightly ritual of washing their feet in salt water to ward off bad dreams. You consider trying it. But you don't have salt. Or dreams. Just this tired body. This tired heart. You drift, finally. The house creaks. The city exhales. And you, miracle of miracles, sleep. You wake once again to the distant clatter of hoofbeats in the street and the soft murmur of rain on the windows. London smells like soot and wet stone. You're sore but not surprised. Sleep doesn't fix anything anymore, it just blurs the edges. Downstairs, the house feels different. Not somber, not quiet. Buzzing. Someone important is coming. Bess is already dressed and her corset's laced tighter than usual. It's a patron night, she whispers, eyes flicking toward the stairwell. Real money. Patron nights are rare. Maybe twice a season. That's when benefactors, wealthy, titled men who fund the place from behind the velvet curtain visit in person. When the piano gets tuned. When you're warned to act your class and not embarrass Madame. The candles are fresh, the brandy is older, and suddenly everyone becomes very interested in posture. You brush your hair until your arm aches, re-lip your mouth with the last stub of rouge and iron out the wrinkles in your expression. Downstairs, the parlor looks like a painting. New flowers. Decanter glinting gold. A pair of footmen hover by the door like statues. And then he enters, tall, gray-haired. Not unattractive if you squint and forgive the coldness in his eyes. Rumors say he's a duke. Others say he owns half the railroads north of York. All you know for sure is that Madame curtsies truly curtsies when he passes. He doesn't pick you, he picks the new girl. You see her eyes widen. See her glance toward you. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't realize yet that refusal is not in her vocabulary tonight. Madame gives you a look. Play, she mouths silently, and your fingers move toward the piano before your thoughts catch up. So you play, a soft, winding nocturne. Not quite Mozart, not quite Chopin, something in between, learned half by ear, half by heart. You play so she won't have to hear herself say yes. Historians still argue whether music in brothels was meant to entertain or distract or both. Some records suggest girls learned songs specifically designed to calm drunken men. Others imply it was simply to keep clients from hearing the crying upstairs. Either way you play, later you find the new girl sitting on the back stairs, knees hugged to her chest. She doesn't cry. She stares at her hands like they belong to someone else. You sit beside her, say nothing. Eventually she whispers, "I don't think I can do this." And in that moment you want to tell her to leave, to run, to go back to her brother, her Bible, her fields. But you don't, because you remember when you sat on those same stairs, when someone else said nothing beside you. Instead you say, "Then don't, just do tonight. Worry about tomorrow. It's not advice, it's survival. Dinner is bread again. And cheese this time, which feels like a holiday." Bess snorts. Next, they'll be giving us raisins. You both laugh real breathy laughter. It feels strange in your throat. Later, you walk out to the courtyard for a breath of air. The rain has stopped, and the moonlight paints the cobblestones silver. You tip your face upward, let your skin feel something clean for once. A rat skitters by. You don't flinch. Just another resident. You remember what the preacher shouted in Hyde Park last summer? "Repent ye harlots, for ye are the rot of empire." And you laughed. Not because he was wrong, but because he thought he was telling you something you didn't already know. Still, a fringe detail sticks with you. Some Victorian moralists believed that every brothel girl had a spark left inside her, a flicker of something divine no matter how deep the filth. Some called it mercy, others called it delusion. Tonight you don't feel like rot, or mercy, or delusion. You feel like someone's still alive, and that is something. You head back inside, close the door behind you, climb the stairs one more time. It's not a prison, this place, but it's not freedom either. It's limbo. You lie down knowing the night won't be long enough, that someone will knock again, that someone will need something again. But for now, the house is quiet. The new girl sleeps curled up like a cat in the corner. Bess snores faintly, and you, miracle of miracles, feel something close to peace. For now, for just this breath, wind down 300 words. The air is still. The sounds of London have faded into nothing more than a soft hum beyond the glass. The clatter of distant wheels, the sigh of steam from an unseen pipe, the hush of rain returning like a whisper. You're no longer in the brothel. Not really. You're here now, wrapped in blankets, listening as the ghosts of history settle down with you. You made it through the day, even if your shoes are worn thin and your spirit a little bruised. That's the miracle, isn't it? Enduring what should have broken you. Let your shoulders drop now. Let your breathing slow. It doesn't matter whether this place was the Empire's secret shame or its open secret. Whether the girls were victims or survivors or both. Whether anything could have been different. You were there. You felt it. You saw the candlelight flicker, heard the creak of old floorboards, tasted the dust in the air. Now let it go. Let the names fade, Eleanor, Bess, Madame, the nameless men. Let the ribbons fall silent. Let the music drift into the dark. You're safe now. Tomorrow we'll explore somewhere else. Another century, another truth. But for now, let your mind grow soft at the edges. Let your thoughts tangle like hair unbrushed. Let your breath stretch out like the sky after rain. Sleep well, dear listener. You survived the night, and that's enough. End of script. Sweet dreams.